Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will discuss how to use the manage identity with LogicApp and a storage account. So we have a LogicApp in which a workflow requires to fetch some blobs contained from a storage account, and we don't want to use any sensitive information of a storage account like connection string or access key to fetch the blob content, because managing the username and password or the sensitive information is going to be a tedious job, and it's going to be a risk in terms of the security as well. So we have decided to use the manage identity concept with LogicApp and storage account. So I'll give you a demo. How do you set up the manage identity with the same? Hi, my name is Rakesh Suryavanshi and you're watching PL Learner. So I have a LogicApp standard which I've created for this particular demonstration. This LogicApp has got some workflow already, and I'll be creating a new workflow for this demonstration. Apart from this, I have a storage account in which I have a container. So if I go to the storage browser, if I go to the containers, and within the container, I have a data container, and in which we have a sample JSON, which is a sample.json file, which is a blob which we want to retrieve inside our LogicApp. So for that, I'll be creating a new workflow which is of type stateful workflow. I'll be calling it as in MSI blob demo, and let's create it as in stateful type. Now, as we are using the manage identity, which means that our LogicApp or the source type of resource, whichever resource is your source, which is trying to connect to the destination or the target resource, needs to have the identity set up. So as we already know that there are two different type of identity which you can set up on most of the Azure resources, like a system managed identity. It's an identity which is managed by the Microsoft Azure itself. You just enable it and it will be created built in within the system by Microsoft, and it is managed by Microsoft. So currently I have enabled the system managed identity with the LogicApp. As you can see from here, this is my object ID or service principal ID for the managed identity which has been configured on this particular LogicApp. You have another type of managed identity which is user assigned identity. In this case, usually you create a manage identity type of service, which is a separate instance of the identity which you can create, and the same identity can be plugged into a different resources depending upon the need. So you do not have a requirement. Let's say you do not need to create a separate identity resource identity system identity for each of your resources. You just create one identity or maybe a couple of identity for depending upon your various actions which you want to perform, and you attach those identity to these resources, which is called the user managed identity. For this demonstration, I'm using the system managed identity, but it will work as is for the user managed identity as well. Now, as I have the identity configured, what I can do is I can use this identity to set up the RBAC roles, because in order to fetch the data from the storage account, this LogicApp needs to have appropriate roles to fetch the data. So let's go to the storage account. Now, within the storage account, if I go to the identity and access management control, I need to set up a role assignment. Let's look at if we have a role already assigned. At the moment, we do not have any other role assigned, which is a custom role assigned to this particular resource. So I can go here, click and add role assignment. To assign the role onto a resource, you need to have an administrator or the owner on the subscription. So that's the role you need to have as a logged in user or a service principal. Now, to fetch the data from the blob or from the storage account container, you need to have a appropriate role. So if I type data, then I'll be able to get the data roles, which you can see here. Storage account blob data contributor. That's the role I'm looking for to assign for my managed identity. So I'll select this role. The role has been selected, as you can see from here. Now the next option I get is whom do you want to assign this role? Is it a user, group, service principal? So the option I'm going to select here is the manage identity, and then what is the manage identity you want to use. So I'll be using the LogicApp. So you can see that from the right of the screen, we have multiple options for all system managed identity, and the LogicApp standard specific managed identity. I'll select LogicApp. So I have two LogicApps, so it's giving the name of both the LogicApp. I'll be using this demo run LogicApp. So I'll be selecting this, select, and that's it. You can review the LogicApp manage identity configuration, assign it, and that's it. Now if I'm going to refresh it after it saves, I should have a new role configured for my storage account, which is a storage blob contributor assigned to this LogicApp. Now role is done. Next, we can straight away go to our workflow and define the workflow designer to have a step basically to read the blob. I'll go to the MSI block demo. We'll go to the designer. I'll use in-app, and first I need to select a trigger type for my LogicApp, which is a prerequisite for defining your workflows. You need to have at least one trigger type. So I'm going to use the HTTP trigger for this particular demonstration. When a HTTP request received, we'll say HTTP request method type, as we are just trying to pull some data from the storage account. So I'll choose the method type as in get. Next action I'm going to choose as in Blob storage. Again, I'm going to use the built-in connector. So I'm using this option, which is in-app, and this is the built-in connector available for Blob. Here you have multiple options to check or to read, multiple options to use from the Blob storage connector. So I'm going to use a read blob content, and it is asking you to create a connection because our LogicApp workflow does not have any connector so far for the storage account. This is the first time I'm creating it, so it's asking me to create a connector. So as we are creating a built-in connector, so I need to provide the name of the connector, then authentication type. As we discussed in the as we discussed earlier, there are ways which you can use like connection string or app settings to fetch the data of the blob storage. So you have option to use that. You also have option to use the Azure Active Directory authentication, and the third one is the manage identity. So in this demo, we are going to use the manage identity. Next, you need to provide the storage account endpoint string. Storage account endpoint string. So I'll be getting this from the storage account. If we go to the endpoints under the setting, and we have the blob storage endpoint, which is this one. I'll copy that and create new. This should create a connection. Now you need to give it the name of the container. So our container name was data, and our blob name was sample.json. Obviously, you can parameterize these values, which I'm not doing it for this demonstration. Next, I'll be adding a new step wherein we are going to retrieve the response back, and the content body will use the blob content, read response from the content. Let's save it again. Let's save successfully. That's it really. Now I need to test this workflow. Let's run that if it works. Well, the workflow run is successfully completed. Let's look at the history of the run. So the request has triggered successfully, which is a GET request. It's trying to read the blob content, which is the blob which we have provided. As you can see from here, this is the container name and the blob name, and we have got the response. So I have got all my details which were mentioned in that particular blob. Okay, now let's look at the connection to verify we are using this proper stateful connection or built-in connector, and we are not using any kind of a connection string. So to verify that, I'll go to the connections, and then you have a JSON view, which you can see that different type of connectors. So you can see that in the manage API connection, we are not using any kind of a manage connector, which is a paid connector with LogicApp. We are using a service provider connection option, which is a built-in connection, which means that it is managed by Microsoft. You do not have to pay for that. Now, with the Azure Blob, we have the display name as in connection, then parameter set as in manage identity, and the Blob endpoint which has been set under the app settings value. So that's what we are using. There is no way we have specified any kind of a connection string for the storage account. I can go to the configuration option and verify again, just to make sure that we do not have any kind of a connection string for the storage account built in automatically configured. We'll go to the advanced edit and you can see that we do not have any connection string for that particular storage account. This is another storage account which has been used only for the sending the logs by this standard LogicApp to the storage account, but not to our transactional storage account, which is this one. So that's it about the demonstration of connecting to the storage account from LogicApp with a secretless option using the manage identity. In our next demonstration, we'll see some other services or some other connectors to connect from the LogicApp to these services using the manage identity. I hope you have found this useful. If it is, please give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thanks for watching it. See you in the next video.